Folks, welcome back. Today we are going to take a deep dive into the world of grading your cards. And I'm going to cover every single question I always get. Alex, do you buy your graded cards? Do you grade them yourself? Which company do you use? Why do you use the company that you use? What are the most liquid? What are the highest grades? What is kind of the grading tier for the most sought after, most expensive grades on the market, and everything in between? And guys, I'm going to tell you right up front, my answer is always going to differ from every other answer you get out there. Everyone has their own method, their own ideology when it comes to card grading. I will try to cover most of those. Just understand that my method that I use does not have to be the method you use. You don't have to agree with it. I just want to explain everything so you understand the breakdown of how all this works. So first and foremost, do I grade my own cards? Of course. Is every card in my collection one that I graded myself? No. Obviously, I pick up collections at this point where graded cards are in them, where I can pick them up at a lower percentage of market. But I do try to grade a good portion of my cards myself, and I'll tell you why. Once you get good at grading and you can start, grading in that 70, 80% plus percentile of PSA 10s with your order, so you kind of get a high gem rate, you end up getting into your cards in your collection at such a low cost basis that you're not at risk of losing. At least, barring some crazy market collapse where things drop like 50+%. Usually the PSA 10 multiples, and I use PSA 10, I use PSA, we'll get into that in a second. But usually the 10 multiples are so high that the price you paid for the raw card plus the grading fee, it's not really in danger of ever losing money because of how high the multiple is. Like a good example is like the Umbreon EX from Prismatic Evolutions, right? If I pay $1,200 for that card and I graded a PSA 10 and now it's worth $4,000, even if that card dropped in half, even after my cost for grading and the cost of the raw card, I'm still going to be positive on that card. So it reduces a lot of the risk of holding slabs than paying, full market price in the market, or even paying a small percentage lower than market price if you're buying out a collection or buying in bulk or making a deal. And so that's the first thing. I always prefer to grade my own cards if I can, but if it's a card that's particularly hard to grade or, just the right deal, I will pick them up as well. I did, kind of spoil something in that where I said PSA. I use PSA. It is not because I'm a PSA shill. It is not because I am the champion of the PSA company. It is not because I own PSA slabs, so I'm trying to shill my investment or my collection. To be honest with you guys, the slab part, the graded card part of my collection is like 1% of my total portfolio. I could really care less either way. There's a simple reason why I use PSA. It's a couple of reasons. One, they are the most liquid and sought after slabs on the market, bar none. All of the sales data proves that. That's not up for discussion. Everything else can be up for discussion. That is not. It's very clear. They are the clear winner when it comes to liquidity and people that seek after it. Two, overall, in my opinion, you're going to do better off sending your pristine cards to PSA and getting a PSA 10. You are going to get the PSA 10 much more often than you are the top grades of the other companies, even if they sell at a premium. What I mean by that is the competitors to PSA right now, the major ones, right? We're not going to get into all the little companies, are going to be CGC, Beckett, BGS, and TAG. Okay. The TAG slabs for a while on some sales were selling at a premium to PSA. Now it seems they are not. It kind of fluctuates. So that's kind of up in the air because it's brand new. CGC Pristine 10s do sell at a premium most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time to PSA 10s. And Beckett Black Labels are definitely the gold standard and sell at a high premium to PSA 10s. And even Beckett Pristines usually sell at a bit of a premium to PSA 10. So I can already feel what you're going to ask, Alex. If there are companies out there that do sell a higher price than PSA 10, why would you not send your cards to them? The rate at which you get a Beckett Black Label, a Beckett Pristine 10, a CGC Pristine 10, etc., are so much lower than the rate at which you'll get a PSA 10 that the few that you get with your orders, or the few that you get over time, in my opinion, does not outweigh getting all of those just in PSA 10. Because what happens is the Beckett 9.5s, they're far less liquid, far less sought after, and sell at a pretty decent discount to what a PSA 10 does. And you get mostly 9.5s when you send a Beckett. Anyone that has, you've probably experienced this. And CGC, the CGC Gem Mint 10, that's the one under the Pristine, sells at a good discount to a PSA 10, which again is the majority you receive. And so I would rather take the high probability play, send all of my cards to PSA, get a high volume of 10s, and not worry that if I sent to CGC, I may get a few Pristines, send to Beckett, maybe I get a few Pristines, maybe a black label here or there. It doesn't outweigh all the gains you lost by all the 9.5s, all the, regular Gem Mint 10s, all the 9s, etc. Also, PSA trumps all of those companies, every one of them, when it comes to the lower grades. The 9s, the 8s, the 7s. People still prefer PSA when it comes to a PSA 9. It will outsell a CGC 9, a Beckett 9, a Tag 9, whatever it may be. And like I said, the liquidity is higher and the people that seek after it are more. And so those are the reasons that I stick with PSA, right? Now, I understand it has its downfalls. You can say the wait times are sometimes longer. It costs more. They have the upcharges, all those different things. But what we have to understand is a lot of times all those are baked into the market price already, right? Because everyone is paying those, which we'll get into a conversation here in just a second about discounts. PSA doesn't offer a lot of discounts. I know some of the top players in this hobby at this point. Every one of them informed me like, yeah, PSA just doesn't give a lot of discounts. Like maybe you get a few dollars off if you're really, really high volume, but they do not give the big players massive discounts. So everyone's pretty much in the same playing field when it comes to grading fees. And that way the market price is baked in because everyone's paying the same price. So everyone has to work those prices into their cards when they sell them. Fast forward now to CGC. CGC is taking a complete different market approach. They work massive deals with their heavy volume players. And I am talking down to like a few dollars a card. Yes, it's real. If you grade enough with CGC and you work a deal with them, you can get your grading fees cut in half and even less. That is real. I know people out there that pay it. It is what it is. Now, because of this, it gives them a leg up. And they don't really, the people that grade in that kind of volume, they don't care that the slabs aren't going to hold the same value. They don't even care about their pristine rate, their gem rate, any of those things. All these people care about is the business side of it. They know if they can send X amount of cards to CGC, they only have to pay X amount to grade them. They'll get all those slabs back. They can run them through their streams, run them through their stores, and they're going to make a certain amount of margin every single order. That's all they care about. And they're just kind of trying to rinse and repeat that method again and again and again and move as many slabs as possible. Even if they're only making a few bucks each slab, it doesn't matter. That is profit. That is cash flow. It keeps the business running. Now, unfortunately, the people buying those slabs are kind of getting hosed because CGC slabs, other than pristines and some gem mints, they're not even the most liquid in this market. That should scare you. Beckett slabs are not even the most liquid in this market. That should scare you. What do you think happens when things slow down? What do you think happens in a bear market? If people are already not buying those in high rates, the liquidity will go way down. You already hear vendors, there's a lot of vendor videos talking about it. Tag slabs, CGC slabs, Beckett slabs, other slabs. They move in a fraction of the volume that PSA slabs move. And it's not because there's just more PSA slabs out there. It's because the general consumer out there wants PSA over the others. And it's just the way it is. I've talked about it before. It's not about being a PSA shill. It's just about changing the mind of the entire community is very difficult, right? Even if you believe other slabs look better, other grades are more precise, you want to go with, a computer grading company, AI grading company, because you feel it's more accurate. We'll get into that in a second. You feel that the AI grading isn't subjective. We'll get into that in just a second. But all those reasons, that's fine. You can have the reasons why you want to collect them. But at the end of the day, if less people want them, it is what it is. It's going to affect the price. It's going to affect the liquidity. And the majority of people have PSA slabs in their collection, so they usually just want to keep everything kind of the same, right? They want all the red labels. They don't want to have a whole bunch of different size slabs and shapes and colors and all that stuff. So that's the truth behind it. Getting into the AI grading, right? AGS was the first, I believe. Now it's TAG and AGS. Here's the thing about the grading. People say, I want to use AI grading because it's not subjective. It's actually not true. It's not true. A human has to program the AI. So when you program the AI with the metrics that you want it to grade with, it's already being subjective right there. Now, you could say, well, Alex, it still grades the same way every time, and that's fine. So it's going to grade the same exact way with the same level of subjectivity that it was programmed with. And you can say, well, yeah, that's still better than like a PSA where it's all human and it could always be different. And I agree. It's definitely a lower level of subjectiveness, but it's still a level because a human is putting in the metrics to which it grades with. But at the end of the day, I understand the premise of AI grading. I think it probably will eventually get to a point where most companies will use it. Again, in my opinion, just based on how business works, if one of the companies ever gets big enough or the technology ever gets good enough and starts to be trusted, likely a company like PSA will just end up buying it and using it themselves, and you'll still be putting PSA slabs. But that's just me spitballing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the company does rise up and take down PSA. I just strongly doubt it at this point. But understand there's always going to be a level of subjectivity in all this stuff. Last couple of points I want to hit on. Be careful diving too deep into the niches. When you get really deep into the niches of this hobby and you start listening to some of the real hardcore collectors or people who have been here a long time that, mostly focus on like vintage and mid-era and some higher dollar cards, you're going to hear a lot of talk about buy the card, not the grade, or a strong 10, a weak 10, a strong 9, a weak 9. And what they're saying is that because grading is all subjective, you want to actually look at the card itself and buy the cleanest card you can find and not just buy the grade. And at face value, I get it, 100% makes sense, right? The issue is that is the 1% of 1% in this hobby. The majority of people out there do not care. They want the 10. They don't care if you can somehow show them, look, see, this 9 is actually cleaner than that 10. They're going to say, I don't care. I want the PSA 10. I want the CGC Pristine. I want the Beckett Black Label. And that brings me to my point. I've always been a person that I want to appeal to the masses. I don't want to try to fight in these little markets, these little pockets of, just a few percentage of people where the volume's really low, but you're dealing with like the real hardcore people that when you do make a sale, it's going to be really high dollar. People are going to be really picky. They're going to want a million pictures. I've decided that I don't want to deal in that world. I want to deal to the masses, and the masses, guys, the majority of people in this hobby, they just want the 10 on the label, which is why Beckett is so unsuccessful with giving out so many 9.5s. It doesn't matter how clean the card is. It doesn't matter if it's cleaner than a PSA 10. People do not want a 9.5. It's why CGC stopped the 9.5s and made that Gem Mint 10 label under the Pristine, because they realize people do not want 9.5s. They just don't want it. They enjoy the subgrades, don't get me wrong, right? Having like all the little subgrades, corners, centering, surface, edges, whatever it is. But they do not want their label to say 9.5. They want it to say 10. And so at the end of the day, with the majority of the customers out there in this hobby, they are going to buy the 10 over the cleaner card, the strong 9, right? And so that's one of the things you really want to keep in mind when you are, collecting or investing for yourself, is what the majority of people are going to prefer in the future. Now, there is such a thing as regrading or cross-grading, right? Cracking the slab open, which I can get into that in another video in the future if you really want, how you can actually crack a slab. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but cracking the slab open if you didn't get the grade you want, and resubmitting, right? People say, PSA, please submit again. You don't get the grade you want, crack it open, send it back in, try to get the grade you want, because again, it is subjective. You are talking about humans. Maybe you get a different grader that time. They see it as a 10. Or cross-grading. You crack a Beckett 9.5, you try to get that PSA 10. You crack a, PSA 10, you want to try it for a black label. You want to try it for a Pristine 10, right? You crack a CGC 10, you want to send it to Beckett, send it to PSA. Cross-grading is always going to be a thing. If people see that they can buy a certain graded card well under the market value of another grade in another company, and they think it's clean enough to get that grade, people will always crack slabs. They'll always try to cross-grade. Whenever there's a margin to be made, people are going to try to make it. So that's always going to be a thing, which means the pop reports are never going to be exact. Now, you could probably say the black label pop reports will always be exact. No one's going to crack a black label. That's the creme de la creme. The Pristine pop reports of CGC, maybe they're exact. People might even crack pristines at this point, going for black labels with how crazy people are on the gamble. But certainly everything else is not right. All the 9 pop reports are all wrong. People have cracked tons of 9s in every company. Even all the PSA 10 pop reports, I know people that cracked PSA 10s trying to get black label. Personally, I know them. It's crazy. They do it. They'll crack open a PSA 10 to try to send in for a black label. Beckett Pristine definitely gets cracked open to try to get the black label. 9.5s get cracked. So the black label may be the only true pop report on the market that never gets cracked. Everything else, I would say, anything you see on the pop report, there's probably less of that card in existence. So what I mean by that is every time you grade something, it's a new cert number, right? Now, again, Tag says that they can, they'll know the exact card that gets sent in. Maybe they're the one company that that won't happen with. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But every other company is going to be less in existence than the pop report actually says, because every one of those has been cracked at one point and resent in, probably with someone else or the same company. So some could have, so the pop reports are always going to be, inflated. So understand that out there. It's not saying it's like a huge percentage, but it is a percentage. I'm not saying like the pop report says 20,000, there's really only 10,000, nothing like that. But there's definitely going to be some wiggle room there. So understand that. Last thing is my whole feeling on graded cards and singles. If you're a collector, there are still a few reasons to get your cards graded. Even if you're not really about the value, you're like, Alex, I just like having the card in my binder. And I get that, but with some of these top loader binders, put a card in a top loader, put it in a binder. Yeah, it's going to stay protected. I know some people say that, you can have issues with that, stick to the plastic, whatever. I think depending on if you have the card stored in a climate controlled room at the right temperature with no moisture and stuff and, no humidity, I think you'll be fine. I don't know 100%, but I think you'll be fine long term. But main things about grading, here's the cool part, right? Any grading company, you're protecting the card, putting it in a slab, okay? You're getting a third-party opinion on the grade. So if you do ever go to transact it, sell it, trade it, you have a third party that assigned a number, and so it has a value on the market. Instead of, pulling out a raw card and someone saying, I don't know, that's near mint plus, that's near mint minus, no, that's light play, no, I think it's near mint, and going through this big argument, it's like, no, it's a PSA 10 or it's a PSA 9 or whatever, it's a CGC, whatever it is, BGS, whatever. This is what it's worth. This is the last recent sales on the market. Here's the market price. What percentage do you want to pay, or what do you want to trade for it, whatever it may be, right? And so it helps with that. And also, I know grading companies, it always gets publicized when it happens. There's always instances where they do grade a fake card here or there. It happens. You got to remember, they grade millions of cards a month, guys. There's always going to be one here or there that slips through. I understand that. There's outliers, right? At the end of the day, for the most part, you're getting an authenticated card. So you're trading a real collectible, an authentic card. And you own an authentic card. So that's the other reason to grade, even if you're just a collector, right? So there are reasons to actually have slabs over single cards if you're a collector. As an investor with me, I call them short-term plays. They could be a matter of months or a matter of years. I do keep some slabs in my collection if I do see long-term growth or I just really like them. A lot of the time with me, I do transact slabs pretty regularly, a lot more regularly than sealed product, because my whole feeling always has been they're not making more sealed product after it goes out of print, but they're always making more slabs because there's always more product being opened. There's always more cards being graded. So the pop reports always go up when the sealed population always goes down. So that's why I always prefer sealed long-term, because it is depreciating, or not depreciating asset, a deflationary asset. But that's why I stick with sealed most of the time. But you guys see me own a lot of slabs. I do make a lot of plays in slabs, and I do grade a lot of slabs because there is good margin, especially when you get good at it, to actually be able to either keep the cards you want, trade off the ones that you did well on, use that income to buy other things for your collection. I think grading is a great part of this hobby that really helps a lot of people get ahead. So that's kind of my overall take on grading in the companies. Again, I truly, guys, I have no motive behind pushing PSA over others. It's just what I do. It's the most high probability play, is to try to just get the most 10s, because at the end of the day, the 10s and 9s, you're going to do better overall, in my opinion, than trying to chase the pristines or black labels. Unless, again, you're just like a high volume company, you have deals worked out with other companies, and you can just move so much volume that it's just about making that cash flow and that margin. So hopefully that helped. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think, and I'll be back in a new one soon. I'm out.